A bustling city center falls completely silent in a single generation. How does an entire advanced civilization simply vanish without a trace? We're diving into one of history's most profound mysteries, a society that disappeared seemingly overnight. By the end, you will understand the chilling evidence and the top theories that explain this ancient collapse. We will uncover why a powerful people abandoned their homes and what their empty cities can teach us about our own world. What do you believe is the greatest threat to a thriving society? Their story begins not with a whisper, but with a roar that echoed across a lush, green landscape. Nestled in the heart of the Yucatan Peninsula, the Maya civilization rose from the dense tropical rainforest, a place where survival itself was a daily challenge. Yet they did more than just survive. They transformed this challenging environment into a cradle for one of the most sophisticated societies the ancient world ever produced. At their peak, their city-states were sprawling metropolises, buzzing with life and ambition. Grand plazas, paved with white stone, shimmered under the sun, surrounded by towering pyramids that scraped the sky. These were not just piles of rock, they were precisely engineered temples and palaces, aligned with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. The sheer scale of their construction, like the colossal pyramid at Tikal known as Temple Roman IV, rivaled the monuments of ancient Egypt. Imagine standing at its base, looking up at a structure taller than a 20-story modern building, all built without metal tools, without the wheel, without pack animals. This was a society of profound intellect and determination. Their brilliance extended far beyond architecture. The Maya were avid astronomers, charting the cosmos with stunning accuracy from observatories perched high in their stone cities. They developed a complex calendar system so precise it could track celestial cycles for millions of years, but perhaps their most enduring intellectual achievement was their writing. They possessed the only fully developed writing system in the pre-Columbian Americas, a beautiful and intricate script of hieroglyphs carved into stone and painted on bark paper. This was not simple picture writing, it was a true language capable of recording history, poetry, and the complex lineage of their kings. They were masters of their environment, too. In a land with few surface rivers, they engineered elaborate systems of reservoirs and canals to capture rainwater, supporting populations that numbered in the tens of thousands in a single city. Their agricultural ingenuity, creating raised fields and swampy areas, turned perceived wastelands into fertile gardens. This was a civilization at the absolute height of its power, a dominant force whose cultural and economic influence stretched for hundreds of miles. Their vibrant markets, their scholarly priests, and their powerful rulers created a world that seemed unshakable, permanent, which makes what happened next so deeply and mysteriously unsettling. Then, with terrifying speed, the roar became a whisper. The grand plazas fell silent. The evidence left behind paints a picture not of a slow decline, but of a sudden, frantic exodus. It is a historical crime scene, and the clues are both haunting and stark. In a royal residence at Tikal, archaeologists found a half-finished meal, the serving vessels still in place as if the inhabitants simply stood up and walked away, never to return. In a stonecutter's workshop at Karakal, fine tools were found dropped on the floor, left exactly where they were last used. These are not the artifacts of a planned migration. They are the echoes of a final day, a moment when life as they knew it simply stopped. The primary suspect in this ancient mystery is a relentless and unforgiving force of nature, a catastrophic, multi-generational drought. Analysis of sediment cores from nearby lakes reveals a chilling story written in mud and minerals. For decades, perhaps even a century, the rains simply failed. The sophisticated reservoirs that were the lifeblood of the great cities slowly dried up, turning from sources of sustenance into vast, empty stone bowls. Imagine the slow burning panic as the water levels dropped year after year, as crops withered in the fields, and the once lush jungle began to brown and die. This was not a single bad season, it was a climatic catastrophe that would have shattered their agricultural foundation and strained their complex society to the breaking point. Could a different environmental disaster have been the trigger? Some scientists point to the possibility of a massive volcanic eruption, perhaps thousands of miles away. Such an event could have spewed vast quantities of ash and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and creating a volcanic winter. Global temperatures would have plummeted, growing seasons would have been obliterated, and a persistent, gloomy haze would have settled over the land. For a civilization whose cosmology and agriculture were intimately tied to the sun and its cycles, this would have been both a practical and a spiritual catastrophe. The gods themselves would have seemed to have turned their backs, yet another theory shifts the blame from nature to human economics. The Maya elite were powered by a network of trade that stretched across the region, exchanging luxury goods like jade, obsidian, quetzal feathers, and cacao. What if that network suddenly collapsed? A shift in trade routes, perhaps caused by war or the rise of a new power, could have choked the flow of these status symbols. Without these goods, the ruling class would have lost their primary means of displaying power and rewarding loyalty. Their authority, built on spectacle and wealth, would have evaporated, leading to social unrest and the dissolution of the political order that held the city-states together. Was their downfall not a physical starvation, but a collapse of the very idea that bound them together? The empty cities stand as silent witnesses, but the question remains, what was the final, fatal blow? But what if the enemy was not a force of nature, but the Maya themselves? The next set of suspects in this ancient mystery points directly to human conflict, to a society tearing itself apart from the inside. One compelling theory suggests a massive, widespread revolt of the common people against the ruling elite. For centuries, the kings and priests held unquestioned power, their authority divinely ordained by the gods. They lived in stone palaces, wore jade and finery, and demanded back-breaking labor to build their monumental pyramids. The commoners, the farmers who grew the food, and the laborers who moved the stones, bore the entire weight of this system. Imagine the growing resentment after generations of this, then compounded by a devastating drought. The reservoirs are empty, the crops have failed, and yet the king in his temple continues to demand tribute and labor for rituals that no longer bring the rain. The social contract shatters. The archaeological evidence for this is chillingly indirect. In some palaces, the finely carved stone monuments depicting the kings, the very stelae that proclaimed their divine right to rule, were systematically defaced and toppled. This was not random vandalism, it was a deliberate, symbolic act of regicide, an erasure of the old order. It suggests a people who had lost all faith in their leaders, rising up to destroy the very symbols of a power that had failed them. Another equally grim possibility is that the Maya world was consumed by a series of brutal, escalating civil wars. We know these city-states were often at odds, competing for resources and prestige. Inscriptions boast of victories of captured kings and sacked cities, but what started as controlled conflicts between rival dynasties could have spiraled into a total war of annihilation. As resources grew scarcer, the wars would have become more desperate and more destructive. They were not just fighting for glory anymore, they were fighting for the last remaining patches of fertile land and the final reserves of water. The archaeological record shows that in the final days of some cities, defensive walls were hastily constructed right through the middle of once open plazas and ceremonial centers. This is not the action of a society fearing an outside invader. It is the sign of a city turning in on itself, of neighborhoods fortifying against each other, a complete breakdown of civic order into urban warfare and paranoia. Then we must consider an external threat. Could a powerful new enemy have arrived from outside the Maya heartland? Some researchers point to a possible invasion, a sea peoples-like event for the Americas. There is evidence of a growing, militant presence from central Mexico, a culture centered on the mighty city of Teotihuacan. We know the Maya had contact with them, but that contact may have turned from trade to conquest. At the city of Tikal, murals and artifacts suddenly show strong Teotihuacan influences in its final centuries. Some interpretations suggest this was not a friendly cultural exchange, but a military takeover, an insertion of a foreign elite that destabilized the traditional power structure and ignited even more widespread conflict. Yet the evidence is hotly debated. Was this a hostile invasion that shattered the civilization, or merely the arrival of new ideas that a weakened society could no longer integrate? The truth is, no single theory holds all the answers. The drought evidence is compelling, but some cities fell before the worst of the dry period. Evidence for revolt is powerful, but it does not explain why people never returned. The invasion theory is dramatic, but it lacks the clear battlefield evidence of a unified conquest. The collapse was likely a perfect storm, a cascade of failures where environmental disaster amplified human frailty, and political ambition accelerated an ecological crisis. The real mystery may not be which one thing caused the end, but how so many things could go wrong at once. Yet the Maya never truly vanished. They left behind ghosts, a civilization that haunts the landscape it once dominated. When the Aztecs, centuries later, stumbled upon the immense, vine-choked ruins of these abandoned cities, they could not believe their ancestors had built them. They called the sites Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born, attributing the colossal pyramids and silent plazas to a race of giants or divine beings. This sense of awe and superstition clung to the ruins for 1,000 years, a testament to a lost greatness that even successor empires could not comprehend. The most tantalizing ghost they left is their voice, their intricate hieroglyphic script. For centuries, it was a complete mystery, a beautiful but silent code carved in stone. The breakthrough only came in the latter half of the 20th century when scholars realized it was not just priestly calendars and astronomical charts. This was a true written language, capable of recording the boasts of kings, the dates of battles, and the complex politics of dynasties. Deciphering it has been like tuning a radio to a station that went silent a millennium ago, slowly picking up fragments of a lost broadcast. We now hear names like Waxiclajunuba Keawil, a ruler of Kapan, and Jasaw Chan Keawil, who led Tikal to a great victory, but vast portions of their history remain locked away, a self-penned account of their own rise and fall that we can only partially read. Their echo is not just in stone and script, but in blood and belief. The Maya people themselves never went extinct. Their descendants still live across the Yucatan and Guatemala, speaking Mayan languages and preserving fragments of the old world in their stories and traditions. Modern genetic studies confirm this unbroken lineage, revealing a direct biological thread connecting the builders of the Great Pyramids to people living in the region today. Elements of their worldview, their reverence for corn, and their complex calendar systems were absorbed and transformed by later cultures. This creates a profound and ghostly duality, a powerful civilization that collapsed as a political force, yet whose cultural DNA persists, woven subtly into the fabric of the present. The silence of their cities is an illusion. They are still speaking, if only we know how to listen. The grandeur of the Maya and the silence that followed stand as a stark reminder of our own world's fragility. We have walked through their bustling cities and witnessed their intellectual triumphs, only to see them confronted by a perfect storm of drought, war, and social collapse. No single theory holds the entire truth because their downfall was a cascade of failures where environmental disaster amplified human conflict and political ambition crumbled under unbearable strain. This story is more than an ancient mystery, it is a lesson in impermanence. The most enduring civilizations are not those made of stone, but those built on resilience. The jungle has reclaimed their plazas, but the secrets of their final days are still buried there, waiting. What do you believe was the final blow that silenced this mighty culture? Share your theory in the comments below, and if you are drawn to the echoes of lost worlds, subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest enigmas.